Chapter 11. We caught up with Ursula Monkton on the lawn by the rose bushes. She was holding the jam jar with the drifting wormhole inside it. She looked strange. She tugged at the lid and then stopped and looked up at the sky. Then she looked back to the jam jar once more. She ran over to my beech tree, the one with the rope ladder, and she threw the jam jar as hard as she could against the trunk. If she was trying to break it, she failed. The jar simply bounced off and landed on the moss that half covered the tangle of roots and lay there, undamaged. Ursula Monkton glared at Letty. "Why?" she said. "You know why," said Letty. "Why would you let them in?" She had started to cry, and I felt uncomfortable. I did not know what to do when adults cried. It was something I had only seen twice before in my life. I had seen my grandparents cry when my aunt had died in hospital, and I had seen my mother cry. Adults should not weep, I knew. They did not have mothers who would comfort them. I wondered if Ursula Monkton had ever had a mother. She had mud on her face and on her knees, and she was wailing. I heard a sound in the distance, odd and outlandish, a low thrumming, as if someone had plucked at a taut piece of string. "It won't be me that lets them in," said Letty Hempstock. "They go where they want to. They usually don't come here because there's nothing for them to eat. Now there is." "Send me back," said Ursula Monkton. And now I did not think she looked even faintly human. Her face was wrong, somehow. An accidental assemblage of features that simply put me in mind of a human face, like the knobbly gray whorls and lumps on the side of my beech tree, or the patterns in the headboard of my bed at my grandmother's house, which, if I looked at them wrongly in the moonlight, showed me an old man with his mouth wide open, as if he were screaming. Letty picked up the jam jar from the green moss and twisted the lid. "You've gone and got it stuck tight," she said. She walked over to the rock path, turned the jam jar upside down, holding it at the bottom, and banged it, lid side down, once, confidently, against the ground. Then she turned it right side up and twisted. This time the lid came off in her hand. She passed the jam jar to Ursula Monkton, who reached inside it and pulled out the translucent thing that had once been a hole in my foot. It writhed and wiggled and flexed, seemingly in delight at her touch. She threw it down. It fell onto the grass and it grew. Only it didn't grow. It changed. As if it was closer to me than I had thought. I could see through it, from one end to the other. I could have run down it, if the far end of that tunnel had not ended in a bitter orange sky. As I stared at it, my chest twinged again. An ice-cold feeling, as if I had just eaten so much ice cream that I had chilled my insides. Ursula Monkton walked towards the tunnel mouth. How could that be a tunnel? I could not understand it. It was still a glistening, translucent, silver-black wormhole, on the grass, no more than a foot or so long. It was as if I had zoomed in on something small, I suppose. But it was still a tunnel, and you could have taken a house through it. Then she stopped, and she wailed. She said, "The way back." Only that. "Incomplete," she said. "It's broken. The last of the gate isn't there." And she looked around her, troubled and puzzled. She focused on me, not my face, but my chest, and she smiled. Then she shook. One moment she was an adult woman, naked and muddy. The next, as if she was a flesh-colored umbrella, she unfurled. And as she unfurled, she stretched out and she grabbed me, pulled me up and high off the ground, and I reached out in fear and held her in my turn. I was holding flesh. I was 15 feet or more above the ground, as high as a tree. I was not holding flesh. I was holding old fabric, a perished, rotting canvas. And beneath it, I could feel wood. Not good, solid wood, but the kind of old wood I'd find where trees had crumbled. The kind that always felt wet. And I could pull apart with my fingers. Soft wood with tiny beetles in it, and wood lice, all filled with thread-like fungus. It creaked and swayed as it held me. "You have blocked the ways," it said to Letty Hempstock. "I never blocked nothing," Letty said. "You've got my friend. Put him down." She was a long way beneath me, and I was scared of heights, and I was scared of the creature that was holding me. "The path isn't complete. The ways are blocked." "Put him down. Now. Safely." "He completes the path. The path is inside him." I was certain I would die then. I did not want to die. My parents had told me that I would not really die, not the real me, that nobody really died when they died, that my kitten and the opal miner had just taken new bodies and would be back again, soon enough. I did not know if that was true or not. I knew only that I was used to being me, and I liked my books and my grandparents and Letty Hempstock, and that death would take all these things from me. "I will open him. The way is broken. It remains inside him." I would have kicked, but there was nothing to kick against. I pulled with my fingers at the limbs holding me, but my fingernails dug into rotting cloth and soft wood, and beneath it, wood as hard as bone. And the thing held me close. "Let me go!" I shouted. "Let me go!" "No!" "Mummy!" I shouted. "Daddy!" Then, "Letty, make her put me down!" My parents were not there. Letty was. She said, "Scarthatch, put him down. I gave you a choice before. Sending you home would be harder with the end of your tunnel inside him, but we can do it. And Gran can do it if Mum and me can't. So put him down." "It is inside him. It is not a tunnel. Not any longer. It is a door. It is a gate. It crept up, so now it is inside him. All I need to do to get away from here is to reach into his chest and pull out his beating heart and finish the path." It was talking without words, the faceless, flapping thing, talking directly inside my head. And yet there was something in its words that reminded me of Ursula Monkton's pretty musical voice. I knew it meant what it said. "All your chances are used up," said Letty, as if she were telling us the sky was blue. And she raised 2 fingers to her lips, and, shrill and sweet and piercing sharp, she whistled. They came. High in the sky they were, and black, jet black, so black it seemed as if they were specks in my eyes, not real things at all. They had wings, but they were not birds. They were older than birds, and they flew in circles and loops and whirls, dozens of them, hundreds perhaps, and each flapping unbird slowly, ever so slowly, descended. I found myself imagining a valley filled with dinosaurs, millions of years ago, who had died in battle or of disease, imagining first the carcasses of the rotting thunder lizards, bigger than buses, and then the vultures of that eon, gray-black, naked, winged but featherless, faces from nightmares, beak-like snouts filled with needle-sharp teeth made for rending and tearing and devouring, and hungry red eyes. These creatures would have descended on the corpses of the great thunder lizards, and left nothing but bones. Huge they were, and sleek and ancient, and it hurt my eyes to look at them. "Now," said Letty Hempstock to Ursula Monkton, "put him down." The thing that held me made no move to drop me. It said nothing, just moved swiftly, like a raggedy tall ship across the grass towards the tunnel. I could see the anger in Letty Hempstock's face, her fists clenched so tightly the knuckles were white. I could see above us the hunger birds circling, circling. Then one of them dropped from the sky, dropped faster than the mind could imagine. I felt a rush of air beside me, saw a black jaw filled with needles and eyes that burned like gas jets. And I heard a ripping noise, like a curtain being torn apart. The flying thing swooped back into the sky, with a length of gray cloth between its jaws. I heard a voice wailing inside my head and out of it, and the voice was Ursula Monkton's. They descended then, as if they had all been waiting for the first of their number to move. They fell from the sky onto the thing that held me. Nightmares, tearing at a nightmare, pulling off strips of fabric. And through it all, I heard Ursula Monkton crying. "I only gave them what they needed," she was saying, petulant and afraid. "I made them happy." "You made my daddy hurt me," I said, as the thing that was holding me flailed at the nightmares that tore at its fabric. The hunger birds ripped at it, each bird silently tearing away strips of cloth and flapping heavily back into the sky, to wheel and descend again. "I never made them do anything," it told me. For a moment I thought it was laughing at me. Then the laughter became a scream, so loud it hurt my ears and my mind. It was as if the wind left the tattered sails then, and the thing that was holding me crumbled slowly to the ground. I hit the grass hard, skinning my knees in the palms of my hands. Letty pulled me up, helped me away from the fallen, crumbled remains of what had once called itself Ursula Monkton. There was still gray cloth, but it was not cloth. It writhed and rolled on the ground around me, blown by no wind I could perceive. A squirming, maggoty mess. They landed on it like seagulls on a beach of stranded fish, and they tore at it as if they had not eaten for 1,000 years and needed to stuff themselves now, as it might be another 1,000 years or longer before they would eat again. They tore at the gray stuff, and in my mind I could hear it screaming the whole time, as they crammed its rotting canvas flesh into their sharp maws. Letty held my arm. She didn't say anything. We waited. And when the screaming stopped, I knew that Ursula Monkton was gone forever. Once the black creatures had finished devouring the thing on the grass, and when nothing remained, not even the tiniest scrap of gray cloth, then they turned their attentions to the translucent tunnel, which wiggled and twitched like a living thing. Several of them grasped it in their claws, and they flew up with it, pulling it into the sky, while the rest of them tore at it, demolishing it with their hungry mouths. I thought that when they finished it, they would go away, return to wherever they had come from. But they did not. They descended. I tried to count them as they landed, and I failed. I had thought that there were hundreds of them, but I might have been wrong. There might have been 20 of them. There might have been 1,000. I could not explain it. Perhaps they were from a place where such things didn't apply, somewhere outside of time and numbers. They landed, and I stared at them, but saw nothing but shadows. So many shadows. And they were staring at us. Letty said, "You've done what you came here for. You got your prey. You cleaned up. You can go home now." The shadows did not move. She said, "Go." The shadows on the grass stayed exactly where they were. If anything, they seemed darker and more real than they had before. "You have no power over us." "Perhaps I don't," said Letty. "But I called you here, and now I'm telling you to go home. You devoured Scarred Hatch of the Keep. You've done your business. Now clear off." "We are cleaners. We came to clean." "Yes, and you've cleaned the thing you came for. Go home." outside, the wind and the rhododendron bushes, and the rustle of the grass. Letty turned to me and put her arms around me. "Come on," she said. "Quickly." We walked across the lawn rapidly. "I'm taking you down to the fairy ring," she said. "You have to wait there until I come and get you. Don't leave. Not for anything." "Why not?" "Because something bad could happen to you. I don't think I could get you back to the farmhouse safely, and I can't fix this on my own. But you're safe in the ring. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, don't leave it. Just stay where you are and you'll be fine." "It's not a real fairy ring," I told her. "That's just our games. It's a green circle of grass." "It is what it is," she said. "Nothing that wants to hurt you can cross it. Now stay inside." She squeezed my hand and walked me into the green grass circle. Then she ran off into the rhododendron bushes, and she was gone. Chapter 12. The shadows began to gather around the edges of the circle. Formless blotches, only there, really there, when glimpsed from the corners of my eyes. That was when they looked bird-like. That was when they looked hungry. I have never been as frightened as I was in that grass circle, with the dead tree in the center on that afternoon. No birds sang. No insects hummed or buzzed. Nothing changed. I heard the rustle of the leaves and the sigh of the grass as the wind passed over it. But Letty Hemstock was not there, and I heard no voices in the breeze. There was nothing to scare me but shadows, and the shadows were not even properly visible when I looked at them directly. The sun got lower in the sky, and the shadows blurred into the dusk, became, if anything, more indistinct, so now I was not certain that anything was there at all. But I did not leave the grass circle. "Hey, boy!" I turned. He walked across the lawn towards me. He was dressed as he had been the last time I had seen him. A dinner jacket, a frilly white shirt, a black bow tie. His face was still an alarming cherry red, as if he had just spent too long on the beach, but his hands were white. He looked like a waxwork, not a person, something you would expect to see in the Chamber of Horrors. He grinned when he saw me looking at him, and now he looked like a waxwork that was smiling, and I swallowed and wished that the sun was out again. "Come on, boy," said the opal miner. "You're just prolonging the inevitable." I did not say a word. I watched him. His shiny black shoes walked up to the grass circle, but they did not cross it. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest, I was certain that he must have heard it. My neck and scalp prickled. "Boy," he said in his sharp South African accent, "they need to finish this up. It's what they do. They're the carry-on kind, the vultures of the void. Their job, clean up the last remnants of the mess, nice and neat. Pull you from the world, and it will be as if you never existed. Just go with it. It won't hurt." I stared at him. Adults only ever said that when it, whatever it happened to be, was going to hurt so much. The dead man in the dinner jacket turned his head slowly until his face was looking at mine. His eyes were rolled back in his head and seemed to be staring blindly at the sky above us like a sleepwalker. "She can't save you, your little friend," he said. "Your fate was sealed and decided days ago when their prey used you as a door from its place to this one, and she fastened her path in your heart." "I didn't start it," I told the dead man. "It's not fair. You started it." "Yes," said the dead man. "Are you coming?" I sat down with my back to the tree in the center of the fairy ring, and I closed my eyes, and I did not move. I remembered poems to distract myself, recited them silently under my breath, mouthing the words, but making no sound. Fury said to the mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law. I will prosecute you." I had learned that poem by heart at my school. It was told by the mouse from Alice in Wonderland, the mouse she met swimming in the pool of her own tears. In my copy of Alice, the words of the poem curled and shrank like a mouse's tail. I could say all of the poem in one long breath, and I did, all the way to the inevitable end. "I'll be judge, I'll be jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause and condemn you to death." When I opened my eyes and looked up, the opal miner was no longer there. The sky was going gray, and the world was losing depth and flattening into twilight. If the shadows were still there, I could no longer perceive them. Or rather, the whole world had become shadows. My little sister ran down from the house, calling my name. She stopped before she reached me, and she said, "What are you doing?" "Nothing. Daddy's on the phone. He says you have to come and talk to him." "No, he doesn't." "What?" "He doesn't say that." "If you don't come now, you'll be in trouble." I didn't know if this was my sister or not, but I was on the inside of the grass circle, and she was on the outside. I wished I had brought a book with me, even though it was almost too dark to read. I said the mouse's pool of tears poem again in my head. "Come, I'll take no denial. We must have a trial, for really this morning I've nothing to do." "Where's Ursula?" asked my sister. "She went up to her room, but she isn't there anymore. She's not in the kitchen. She's not in the Lula's. I want my tea. I'm hungry." "You can make yourself something to eat," I told her. "You're not a baby." "Where's Ursula?" "She was ripped to shreds by alien vulture monsters, and honestly, I think you're one of them, or being controlled by them or something." "Don't know." "I'm telling Mummy and Daddy when they get home that you were horrible to me today. You'll get into trouble." I wondered if this was actually my sister or not. It definitely sounded like her. But she did not take a step over the circle of greener grass into the ring. She stuck her tongue out at me and ran back towards the house. Said the mouse to the cur, "Such a trial, dear sir, with no jury or judge, would be wasting our breath." Deep twilight dusk, all colorless and strained. Mosquitoes whined about my ears and landed one by one on my cheeks and my hands. I was glad I was wearing Letty Hempstock's cousin's strange old-fashioned clothing then, because I had less bare skin exposed. I slapped at the insects as they landed, and some of them flew off. One that didn't fly away, gorging itself on the inside of my wrist, burst when I hit it, leaving a smeared teardrop of my blood to run down the inside of my arm. There were bats flying above me. I liked bats, always had, but that night there were so many of them, and they made me think of the hunger birds, and I shuddered. Twilight became, imperceptibly, night, and now I was sitting in a circle that I could no longer see, at the bottom of the garden. Lights, friendly electric lights, went on in the house. I did not want to be scared of the dark. I was not scared of any real thing. I just did not want to be there any longer, waiting in the darkness for my friend who had run away from me, and did not seem to be coming back. "I'll be judge, I'll be jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause and condemn you to death." I stayed just where I was. I had seen Ursula Monkton torn to shreds, and the shreds devoured by scavengers from outside the universe of things that I understood. If I went out of the circle, I was certain they would do the same to me. I moved from Lewis Carroll to Gilbert and Sullivan. When you're lying awake with a dismal headache and repose is tabooed by anxiety, I conceive you may use any language you choose to indulge without impropriety. I loved the sound of the words, even if I was not entirely sure what all of them meant. I needed to wee. I turned my back on the house and took a few steps away from the tree, scared that I would take one step too far and find myself outside the circle. I urinated into the darkness. I had just finished when I was blinded by a torch beam, and my father's voice said, What on earth are you doing down here? I'm just down here, I said. Yes, your sister said. Well, time to come back to the house. Your dinner's on the table. I stayed where I was. No, I said and shook my head. Don't be silly. I'm not being silly. I'm staying here. Come on. And then more cheerful. Come on, handsome George. It had been his silly pet name for me when I was a baby. He even had a song that went with it, and he would sing while bouncing me on his lap. It was the best song in the world. I didn't say anything. I'm not going to carry you back to the house, said my father. There was an edge starting to creep into his voice. You're too big for that. Yes, I thought, and you'd have to cross into the fairy ring to pick me up. But the fairy ring seemed foolish now. This was my father, not some waxwork thing that the hunger birds had made to lure me out. It was night. My father had come home from work. It was time. I said, Ursula Monkton's gone away, and she's not ever coming back. He sounded irritated then. What did you do? Did you say something horrible to her? Were you rude? No. He shone the torch beam onto my face. The light was almost blinding. He seemed to be fighting to keep his temper under control. He said, Tell me what you said to her. I didn't say anything to her. She just went away. It was true, or almost. Come back to the house now. Please, Daddy, I have to stay here. You come back to the house this minute! Shouted my father at the top of his voice. And I could not help it. My lower lip shook. My nose started to run, and tears sprang to my eyes. The tears blurred my vision and stung, but they did not fall, and I blinked them away. I did not know if I was talking to my own father or not. I said, I don't like it when you shout at me. Well, I don't like it when you act like a little animal, he shouted. And now I was crying, and the tears were running down my face, and I wished that I was anywhere else but there that night. I had stood up to worse things than him in the last few hours, and suddenly I knew. I didn't care anymore. I looked up at the dark shape behind and above the torch beam, and I said, Does it make you feel big to make a little boy cry? And I knew as I said it, that it was the thing I should never have said. His face, what I could see of it in the reflected torchlight, crumbled and looked shocked. He opened his mouth to speak. Then he closed it again. I could not remember my father ever being at a loss for words, before or after. Only then. I felt terrible. I thought, I will die here soon. I do not want to die with those words on my lips. But the torch beam was turning away from me. My father said only, We'll be up at the house. I'll put your dinner in the oven. I watched the torchlight move back across the lawn, past the rose bushes and up towards the house, until it went out and was lost to sight. I heard the back door open and close again. Then you get some repose in the form of a doze, with hot eyeballs and head ever aching, but your slumbering teams with horrible dreams that you'd very much better be waking. Somebody laughed. I stopped singing and looked around, but saw nobody. The nightmare song, a voice said. How appropriate. She walked closer until I could see her face. She was still quite naked, and she was smiling. I had seen her torn to pieces a few hours before, but now she was whole. Even so, she looked less solid than any of the other people I had seen that night. I could see the lights of the house glimmering behind her. Through her. Her smile had not changed. You're dead, I told her. Yes, I was eaten, said Ursula Monkton. You're dead, You aren't real." "I was eaten," she repeated. "I am nothing. They have let me out, just for a little while, from the place inside them. It's cold in there, and very empty. But they have promised you to me, so I will have something to play with. Something to keep me company in the dark. And after you have been eaten, you too will be nothing. But whatever remains of that nothing will be mine to keep. Eaten and together, my toy and my distraction, until the end of time. We'll have such fun." A ghost of a hand was raised, and it touched the smile, and it blew me the ghost of Ursula Monkton's kiss. "I'll be waiting for you," it said. A rustle in the rhododendrons behind me, and a voice, cheerful and female and young, saying, "It's okay. Gran fixed it. Everything's taken care of. Come on." The moon was visible now, above the azalea bush, a bright crescent like a thick nail paring. I sat down by the dead tree and did not move. "Come on, silly, I told you. They've gone home," said Letty Hempstock. "If you're really Letty Hempstock," I told her, "you'd come here." She stayed where she was, a shadowy girl. Then she laughed, and she stretched, and she shook. And she was only another shadow, a shadow that filled the night. "You are hungry," said the voice in the night. And it was no longer Letty's voice, not any longer. It might have been the voice inside my own head, but it was speaking aloud. "You are tired. Your family hates you. You have no friends. And Letty Hempstock, I regret to tell you, is never coming back." I wished I could have seen who was talking. If you have something to fear, rather than something that could be anything, it's easier. "Nobody cares," said the voice, so resigned, so practical. "Now step out of the circle and come to us. One step is all it will take. Just put one foot across the threshold, and we will make all the pain go away forever. The pain you feel now, and the pain that is still to come. It will never happen." It was not one voice, not any longer. It was 2 people talking in unison, or 100 people. I could not tell. So many voices. "How can you be happy in this world? You have a hole in your heart. You have a gateway inside you to lands beyond the world you know. They will call you as you grow. There can never be a time when you forget them, when you are not, in your heart, questing after something you cannot have, something you cannot even properly imagine, the lack of which will spoil your sleep and your day and your life until you close your eyes for the final time, until your loved ones give you poison and sell you to anatomy. And even then you will die with a hole inside you, and you will wail and curse at a life ill-lived. But you won't grow. You can come out, and we will end it cleanly. Or you can die in there, of hunger and of fear. And when you are dead, your circle will mean nothing, and we will tear out your heart and take your soul for a keepsake. Perhaps it will be like that, I said to the darkness and the shadows. And perhaps it won't. And perhaps if it is, it would have been like that anyway. I don't care. I'm still going to wait here for Letty Hempstock. And she's going to come back to me. And if I die here, then I still die waiting for her. And that's a better way to go than you and all you stupid, horrible things tearing me to bits because I've got something inside me that I don't even want. There was silence. The shadows seemed to have become part of the night once again. I thought over what I'd said, and I knew it was true. At that moment, for once in my childhood, I was not scared of the dark, and I was perfectly willing to die, as willing as any 7-year-old certain of his immortality can be, if I died waiting for Letty, because she was my friend. Time passed. I waited for the night to begin to talk to me again, for people to come, for all the ghosts and monsters of my imagination to stand beyond the circle and call me out. But nothing more happened. Not then. I simply waited. The moon rose higher. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness. I sang under my breath, mouthing the words over and over. You're a regular wreck, with a crick in your neck, and no wonder you snore, for your head's on the floor, and you've needles and pins, from your soul to your shins, and your flesh is a creep, for your left leg's asleep, and you've cramps in your toes, and a fly on your nose. You've got fluff in your lung, and a feverish tongue, and a thirst that's intense, and a general sense that you haven't been sleeping in clover. I sang it to myself, the whole song all the way through, 2 or 3 times, and I was relieved that I remembered the words, even if I did not always understand them.